Hey friends, this is Pastor Dave, and today is a special day. Today is the 143rd day of the year. It's 143. And Mr. Rogers told me that there's one letter in the word I, there's 4 letters in the word love, L-O-V-E, and there's 3 letters in the word you, Y-O-U. The 143rd day is a good day for us to remember to be neighbors and to be kind and to look to love each other. Today's story is a very special story about a fairy who has some amazing power, but who sometimes gets in people's way. It's called Bloom, and I hope it makes you think. And maybe you can think about how wonderful and extraordinary some of the mud you will find at your house today might be. Let's listen. Bloom is written by Doreen Cronin and David Small. Let's listen. I love these pictures too. You're going to like them. Once upon a time, in a beautiful glass kingdom, there lived a fairy named Bloom. Her boots were caked with mud. There was dirt between her teeth. Beetles nested in her wings. Now Bloom's magic could spin sand into glass, turn weeds into blossoms, and grow a trickle of rainwater into a racing river. Bloom was a beautiful creature. However, her footsteps were heavy. She left a tiny trail of tiny cracks and mud wherever she went. As the years passed and the kingdom became larger and shinier, the people cared less about Bloom's magic and noticed only the mess she left behind. They complained about her heavy feet and her muddy fingerprints. Look at them complaining there. Bloom had finally had enough. She left without saying goodbye and went to live in the heart of the forest. Both the kingdom and Bloom were extraordinarily happy with the choice she had made. Years and years went by, and the kingdom had fallen into a state of disrepair. It was held together by tape, duct tape, glue, and peasants. And the king was reminded of a powerful creature who once lived in the kingdom. His royal court offered to find her, but the king declined their help. "Surely a creature with such power will answer only to a king." "Very well, Your Highness, but tread lightly. Fairies are delicate and easily frightened," advised the royal court. The king entered the forest on his swiftest steed, determined to find the creature and save his kingdom. Bloom felt the horse's hoofbeats and came to greet the king. "I am looking for a magical creature gone so many years ago," he announced. "I'm here," she answered. The king glanced at Bloom with her dirty hair and clunky shoes. "Show me the magic that will save my kingdom," ordered the king. Bloom placed a bucket of mud at the king's feet. "How dare you!" bellowed the king. He dismissed Bloom as a trickster and rode off. "Suit yourself," said Bloom, perfectly happy to go back to her own business. When the king returned empty-handed, many days later, the queen decided that she was much better suited to find a magical fairy. "Maybe your voice frightened her off," said the king reassuringly. "I must go in your place." Boy, that kingdom is not in good shape, is it? The next day she entered the forest, accompanied by a single guard. Bloom heard their footsteps and, once again curious, stepped out to greet the queen. "I am looking for a magical creature gone so many years ago," announced the queen. "I'm here," answered Bloom. "Show me the magic that will save my kingdom," ordered the queen. And Bloom placed a bucket of mud at the queen's feet. "How dare you!" bellowed the queen. She dismissed Bloom as a trickster and rode off. "Have it your way," said Bloom. She picked up her bucket and skipped back to where she came from. There she goes. Look at her. "What of the magical creature?" asked the king upon the queen's return. Broken glass crunched under her feet as she crossed the room. Rain fell from the cracks in the ceiling. "Clearly it is too frightened to speak directly with royalty," answered the queen. "We must send someone ordinary." Genevieve was exactly that, the smallest and quietest in the kingdom. Her only job in the palace was to collect, wash, and dry the queen's exquisite crystal sugar spoon. It was the only object in the entire kingdom that had not yet cracked. The queen summoned Genevieve to her chambers and explained the dire situation. "You are our last hope," she said kindly. "I will not fail you, my queen," Genevieve said in her tiny voice. She brushed the broken glass out of her hair, packed a small bag, and left for the forest. Genevieve traveled through the dark woods without carriage or guard. Bloom heard the sound of her feet pressing into the ground and stepped out to greet the girl. "I am looking for a magical creature gone so many years ago," said Genevieve. "I am here," said Bloom. "Have you any magic to save the kingdom?" Bloom placed a bucket of mud at the girl's feet. Perhaps if I explain," said Genevieve. "You see, our kingdom is built of glass, and it is falling to pieces." Bloom placed a shovel at Genevieve's feet. Of course, I'm happy to help you with your chores, but perhaps you could show me the magic first," Genevieve said. Bloom studied the tiny girl for a moment. She was so delicate. She had barely left a footprint behind her. "What's your work in the kingdom?" asked Bloom. "I collect, wash, and dry the queen's crystal sugar spoon," Genevieve told her. "Is that all you can do?" asked Bloom, hoping that she didn't sound too harsh. Actually, I'm not really sure," said Genevieve. "It's all I'm allowed to do, lest my hands get too rough or too dirty to properly care for the spoon." "Why would the king send a delicate child with such a delicate job deep into the dark forest to do something they could not?" asked Bloom. "Because I'm ordinary," answered Genevieve. A dark shadow passed over Bloom's face. She picked up her bucket. She picked up her shovel. She took the girl by the hand. "I will show you the magic that can save your kingdom," said Bloom. Bloom led the girl into a clearing with a small house, a working fire, and an enormous pit of mud. She plunged both hands into the pit, hurled the brown glob onto the ground, and quickly made a mud pie. "You try it," said Bloom. "Oh, I mustn't," said Genevieve. "I'll never be able to touch the Queen's sugar spoon again." "Do you wish to save the kingdom?" asked Bloom quietly. Genevieve did not want to fail the Queen. So she closed her eyes, stuck her hands into the bucket, pulled out a scoop of wet, gloppy earth. Nervously, she shook her hands, and the mud fell to the ground, splattering everywhere. "Not bad," said Bloom with a smile. Genevieve laughed and brushed the splatters off her feet. "Now try again," Bloom encouraged. This time, Genevieve enjoyed the cool, shifting feel of the mud, so different from that delicate spoon. She flung it to the ground exactly as Bloom had. She's losing all of her fancy clothes, isn't she? "Nicely done," Bloom said. Smiling, Genevieve shaped the mud into a small, round pie. "Perfect!" announced Bloom. "Now, let's make some magic." Genevieve watched Bloom as she shaped one of the mud pies, into a perfect brick. She pulled back her hair with muddy fingers, rolled up her sleeves, and tried to do the same, and she made a lopsided, lumpy, oval brick. After 16 more tries, Genevieve made a perfect brick. "What else can I do?" asked the girl. "You'll see," said Bloom. Shovel after shovel, bucket after bucket, she showed Genevieve how to add straw into the mud. That made the bricks even stronger. And when her pile of bricks towered over her head, Genevieve was not tired at all, but eager to do more. Bloom showed her how to make mortar by mixing mud with sand. "What's that for?" Genevieve asked. "Oh, you'll see," said Bloom. Brick by brick, row by row, wall by wall, the fairy and the girl built a sturdy house. "I can't believe what we've done!" shouted Genevieve. "You must go back to the kingdom and share your magic," said Bloom. But how can I bring back a house?" asked the girl. "You can't. You can only tell the king and the queen what you can do," said Bloom. "That they will never believe that an ordinary girl could do such an extraordinary thing," Genevieve worried. What would I tell them?" "Tell them that there is no such thing as an ordinary girl," said Bloom. Genevieve returned to the kingdom, and her feet were caked in mud, and there was dirt between her teeth, and beetles were resting in her hair, and she knocked on the palace door, and it shattered to pieces. "I am here," she shouted. And then an ordinary girl rebuilt a kingdom. And there is Bloom on the old throne. Gosh, I really like that story because it helps me to remember that sometimes we have to come up with new ways of doing things. It helps me to remember that sometimes we have to get our hands dirty. And most importantly, today it helps me to remember that there's no such thing as an ordinary person. Don't let someone tell you that you're just an ordinary girl or just an ordinary boy. You have amazing gifts. I'll be back tomorrow with a different story. I hope you have a great day today. And if it's still raining where you are, go out and make a mud pie. I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.